In the headlines, several sectors expressed disappointment following President Ferdinand Marcos Jr.'s fourth State of the Nation address earlier today. Some groups staged protests during the speech, while several lawmakers decided not to attend, including presidential sister Amy Marcos. As expected, Vice President Sara Duterte did not attend Marcos Jr.'s State of the Nation address. In a bold and blistering speech ahead of the SONA, Duterte questioned the president's promises and leadership. It's official. Senator Francis Escudero keeps the gavel. With a decisive 19-5 vote, Escudero retains the Senate presidency as the 20th Congress opens its first regular session. Who backed him and what does it mean for the Senate's direction? The full story coming up. Meanwhile, the battlefield is heating up again. Russia claims it struck over 140 Ukrainian targets in a weekend blitz, while Ukraine says it's holding the line after fending off more than 150 attacks, with drones, missiles, and artillery lighting up the front. Tensions between the two sides are reaching new highs. Details ahead. The United States and the European Union reached a landmark trade agreement, one hailed by both sides as among the most significant in history. This comes after months of economic uncertainty. And in the world of entertainment, say their name and they appear. Destiny's Child stuns fans with a surprise reunion in Las Vegas. And yes, Beyonce, Kelly, and Michelle are back on stage together. I'm Angel Pastor. Newsline World starts now. After months of economic uncertainty, the United States and the European Union have reached a landmark trade agreement, one hailed by both sides as among the most significant in history. The deal includes reduced tariffs, major energy commitments, and renewed investment pledges, signaling a turning point in transatlantic relations and global trade stability. Details of this news from Carlo de la Peña.
The United States and the European Union have come to an agreement on a new trade deal, putting an end to months of tension between two economic giants.
I think you were saying this is probably the biggest deal ever reached in any capacity, trade or beyond trade.
It is.
I think it's great that we made a deal today instead of playing games and maybe not making a deal at all. I think it's, I'm going to let you say, but I think it's the biggest deal ever made. Thank you very much. Congratulations.
It's a huge deal.
Yeah.
It was tough negotiations. I knew it at the beginning, and it was indeed very tough, but we came to good conclusions for both sides. So again, congratulations and many thanks.
The U.S. will impose a 15% tariff on most imports from the EU, including cars and semiconductors, half the originally threatened 30% import tax rate that was set to take effect on Friday. The EU is also going to open up their countries to trade at zero tariff on strategic items like aircraft parts, certain chemicals, and some agricultural goods. The bloc has also agreed to purchase a vast amount of military equipment from the United States. However, it is unclear as to how much they'll be purchasing. On top of that, the European bloc has agreed to purchase $750 billion worth of energy from the US and invest into the US $600 billion more than they are already investing. For years, Trump has criticized what he sees as unfair trade practices by Europe. A major issue for him is the trade deficit. Last year, the US imported $236 billion more in goods from the EU than it exported to the bloc. The particular trade deal is significant to both sides as so many businesses and jobs depend on this. It has not been easy getting to this point, but the agreement shows that neither side wanted these negotiations to drag on beyond the August 1 deadline. This comes just days after the US finalized another significant deal with Japan, adding to recent agreements with Vietnam, Indonesia, and the United Kingdom, with tariffs set at only 10% for most goods. Trump says other countries now just have 5 days to come to the table.
First deadline, is there any chance that that gets...
No. The August 1st is there for everyone. The deals all start on August 1st.
If no agreement is reached, South Korea will be hit with a 25% tariff, South Africa 30%, Myanmar and Laos 40%. Meanwhile, the remaining major negotiations involve the country's three largest trade partners, Mexico, Canada, and China. Soon, both the US and China will be having its third round of talks in Stockholm, Sweden. However, it can be noted that China has remained more firm and less willing to compromise compared to other US trade partners. So far, China has adopted a tougher, less flexible stance than other US trade partners. And if negotiations between the world's two largest economies break down, global trade could face turbulent times in the coming months. For God and my beloved Philippines, this has been Carlo de la Peña, SMNI News.
The offensive between Russia and Ukraine persists as both sides report fresh attacks and heavy combat across the front lines. Prince Tripoli for the details.
Tensions remain high on the front lines of the war in Ukraine, with both Russia and Ukraine reporting fresh attacks over the weekend. Russia's defense ministry says its forces have carried out a major offensive, targeting what it calls Ukrainian supply and ammunition depots. Russian forces struck 7 electronic warfare stations, 16 AIM storage sites, and 7 supply depots. They also claim attacks on Ukrainian drone control centers, hitting a total of 146 locations, including military production facilities and temporary bases for Ukrainian troops and foreign fighters. In the skies, Russian air defense reportedly shot down 72 Ukrainian drones over Russian territory at the Sea of Azov on Sunday alone. Meanwhile, Ukraine is pushing back. The General Staff of Ukraine's Armed Forces says its troops were engaged in over 150 battles in the past hours, repelling Russian attacks from several directions. Ukraine also reports a successful strike on a Russian ammunition depots and artillery system. But according to Ukrainian Air Force, Russia launched 83 drones since Saturday evening, but Kyiv's air defenses managed to shoot down 78 of them by Sunday morning. Reporting for Newsline World, this has been Prince Tripoli, SMNI News.
U.S. President Donald Trump is turning up the pressure on Russia and Ukraine, sharply cutting his peace deadline from 50 days to just 10 to 12. Trump, who is currently in Scotland, said he's no longer waiting until early September for Moscow and Kiev to reach a ceasefire. And if no deal is reached in a shortened window, the U.S. will move forward with new sanctions. Let's hear the rest of what he said.
I would have said 5 times we would have had a deal. I've spoken to President Putin a lot. I got along with him very well. But 5 times, and every time 4 times maybe. But we've had discussions. You and I have had discussions. Yeah. We thought we had that settled numerous times. And then President Putin goes out and starts launching rockets into some city like Kiev, and kills a lot of people in a nursing home or whatever. You have bodies lying all over the street. And I say, that's not the way to do it. So we'll see what happens with that. I'm very disappointed. I'm disappointed in President Putin. Very disappointed in him. So we're going to have to look, and I'm going to reduce that 50 days that I gave him to a lesser number, because I think I already know the answer what's going to happen.
Russia, meanwhile, accused Washington of using sanctions to prolong the war and insists it's still open to peace talks, but provided what it calls the root causes of the conflict are addressed. The latest round of Russia-Ukraine negotiations took place last week in Istanbul. Still no ceasefire, but there's progress on humanitarian efforts, including a new prisoner exchange deal. A dramatic rescue occurred in Beijing, where firefighters raced against rising floodwaters to save elderly residents trapped in a nursing home. Torrential rains triggered flash floods in the city's outskirts, putting lives in immediate danger. All 48 people have been rescued, but not without moments of real risk and courage. This report from Andrea Santos.
In the suburban district of Mian, northeast of Beijing, China, Flash floods swallowed streets and homes after days of relentless rain, but it was at a local nursing home where the situation turned critical. 48 people, including many elderly, unable to move on their own, were trapped as flood waters surged around them. Firefighters responded. Arriving on scene, they first spotted 8 people stranded on the roof of a nearby restaurant, among them a child and an elderly person. Then came the nursing home. Using an assault boat, firefighters pushed through the water, jumped in, and swam through the flooded halls. Inside, elderly residents waited, some of them unable to walk. All 48 individuals were safely evacuated throughout the morning. But the danger is far from over. Northern China is bracing for even more heavy rain in the coming days as extreme weather becomes increasingly frequent. Experts warn the climate change is making storms more intense, putting lives, homes, and even China's $2.8 trillion agricultural sector at risk. This is Andrea Santos, your citizen correspondent for God and my beloved country, the Philippines.
Up next, several sectors expressed disappointment following President Ferdinand Marcos Jr.'s fourth State of the Nation address earlier today. Some groups staged protests during the speech, while several lawmakers decided not to attend, including presidential sister Amy Marcos. As expected, Vice President Sara Duterte did not attend Marcos Jr.'s State of the Nation address. In a bold and blistering speech ahead of the SONA, Duterte questioned the president's promises and leadership. More news after the break.
Maging ligtas, maging handa. Narito ang ilang paalala kung sakaling tumama ang lindol. Maghanda ng emergency kits na may lamang flashlight, pito, first aid kit, tubig at pagkain. Alamin ang emergency exits sa inyong bahay, paaralan o opisina. Habang lumilindol, magtago sa ilalim ng matibay na lamesa upang maprotektahan ang sarili sa mga nahuhulog na bagay. Lumayo sa mga bintana at mabibigat na gamit na maaaring mahulog. Kung ikaw ay nasa labas, lumayo sa mga gusali, puno o poste na maaaring matumba. Kung ikaw ay nagmamaneho, itabi at ihinto ang sasakyan at lumabas. Pagkatapos ng lindol, gamitin ang hagdan sa paglabas ng gusali at huwag gumamit ng elevator. Maging alerto sa aftershocks at manatili sa open space kung kinakailangan. Maging ligtas at maging handa sa anumang sakuna. Ang paalalang ito ay hatid sa inyo ng SMNI.
Kung tatanungin, kahit saang aspeto, gusto ko garantisado. Metikuloso akong tao, kaya gusto ko lahat maayos at sigurado. Lahat quality, yung hindi ako makukompromiso, pero sulit ang presyo. Ganyan ang clean fuel. Kaya dito, panatag ang loob ko.
Magandang umaga po, sir. Utang po.
Utang! Kung gusto mo ng dekalidad na gasolina pero sulit ang halaga, mag-clean fuel ka.
Para sa milyong-milyong Pilipinong bumoboto tuwing halalan, isang bagong tanong ang lumitaw. Kung ma-disqualify ang nanalong kandidato, dapat bang ang pumangalawa ang maupo? Isa itong tanong na nilinaw ng Korte Suprema kamakailan na nagbago sa interpretasyon ng electoral law sa Pilipinas. Sa sentro ng usapin ang tinatawag ng second placer rule. Ano nga ba ang second placer rule? Ang second placer rule ay isang doktrina na nagsasaad na ang kandidatong pumangalawa ay maaaring maupo sa posisyon kung madiskwalipika ang orihinal na nanalo. Sa 37 pahinang desisyon na inilabas ng Korte Suprema noong Abril 22 ukol sa kaso ni Sharifa Akil Mangudadato laban kay Dato Pax Ali Mangudadato, inabandona ang nasabing second placer rule mula sa desisyon sa Halos Hos Jr. versus Commission on Elections noong 2012. Batay sa desisyon ng Korte, ang pagtatalaga sa isang kandidatong hindi nakakuha ng mayorya o pinakamaraming boto at ipinoproklama bilang nanalo sa kabila ng tahasang pagtanggi ng mga botante ay isang paglabag sa mismong diwa ng demokrasya. Sa halip, ang patakaran ng succession sa ilalim ng Local Government Code ang ipatutupad. Ibig sabihin, kapag idineklarang hindi kwalipikado ang nanalong kandidato, itinuturing bakante ang posisyon. At batay sa Section 44 at 45 Local Government Code, ang susunod sa linya sa mga halal na opisyal ang dapat pumalit. Ayon sa Korte Suprema, ito ang mas tumutugma sa mga prinsipyo na isang republikang pamahalaan at mas tugma sa totoong boto ng taong bayan. Sa pagtalikod sa second placer rule, pinagtitibay ng Korte Suprema ang prinsipyo ng tunay na representasyon. Dito, ang batas ay hindi pumapabor sa posisyon kundi sa pasya ng sambayanan.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. laid out the key accomplishments, challenges, and plans of his administration during his fourth State of the Nation address held at the Batasang Pambansa. Here's the full report from Hannah Jane Sancho.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. began his fourth State of the Nation address with a rare admission. Many Filipinos are disappointed in government performance, particularly in basic services. He acknowledged that recent election results sent a clear message. In terms of jobs and industries, President Marcos promised to create more jobs. He pointed out that government agencies such as DOLE, DSWD, DTI, and DOT will work together to reduce the unemployment rate. The government will also boost industries like car manufacturing, mold making, electronics, biotechnology, pharmaceuticals, critical minerals, Filipino fabrics, halal products, construction, and power plants. In the issue of rice price and farmer support, Marcos said that the promise of 20 pesos per kilo of rice is becoming a reality. And with the 113 billion pesos allocated to strengthen the programs of the Department of Agriculture, the government will begin rolling out the 20 pesos per kilo rice nationwide through hundreds of Kadiwa stores and centers in various local government units. He then warned traders not to manipulate prices or deceive farmers, labeling it as economic sabotage. To address high pork prices, local production is being strengthened, and a nationwide ASF vaccination campaign has begun. The chief executive also reported that over 8.5 million farmers and fisher folk have already received aid. Thousands of kilometers of farm-to-market roads have already been built, with thousands more being inaugurated. At the same time, thousands of hectares of land across the country have been provided with irrigation. To boost the coconut industry, the administration will ask Congress to amend the Coconut Farmers and Industry Trust Fund Act to better meet farmers' needs. Meanwhile, the Department of Agrarian Reform is fast-tracking the distribution of CLOAs, e-titles, and certificate of condonation with release of mortgage, proving that beneficiaries are debt-free. On energy concerns, President Marcos Jr. highlighted key issues affecting Filipinos, including 3 million households still without electricity, frequent power outages, and high electricity costs. In response, the government is accelerating efforts to expand electrification and boost the country's power generation capacity to help thousands reduce costs and even earn from surplus energy. The Department of Energy will promote the net metering program, while the Energy Regulatory Commission is set to streamline the approval process. President Marcos ordered the Department of Energy, the National Electrification Administration, and the Energy Regulatory Commission to restore normal power service in Siquijor before the end of the year and to investigate the cause of the delays. While on water supply problems, he said that over 6 million consumers nationwide are affected by poor water service. The local water utilities administration is already taking action against inefficient water districts and their partners. This year, the government launched the Academic Recovery and Accessible Learning, or ADL program, and is also strengthening early childhood care and development. The government is also closely monitoring the mental health of children and young people, following reports of many students experiencing bullying and depression. In response, more school counselors will be hired to provide guidance and support. Marcos also revealed that 60,000 teaching positions were added, providing jobs to licensed teachers. Moreover, free Wi-Fi access is being expanded across the country for students and workers. Also mentioned in the President's SONA is the anti-poverty, health and nutrition program that continue to be implemented. The 4Ps program continues and is benefiting over 5 million households. The government planned to amend the 4Ps law to give families enough time to rise from poverty. In its second year, the Walang Gutom program will support 600,000 of the poorest households. On other matters, government support for sports and athletes continues. The events like Palarong Pambansa and Batang Pinoy Games scheduled in General Santos City this October. More public hospitals and specialty centers have been built, with 53 Bucas centers now operating in 32 provinces. New services and programs have also been launched by PhilHealth. In infrastructure development, infrastructure programs such as roads, bridges, trains, airports, seaports, irrigation systems, and affordable housing will continue. Discounts on LRT and MRT fares for students, seniors, and PWDs have been increased from 20% to 50%. Marcos also highlighted the Philippine National Police's 5-minute program response program. He said strengthening both the PNP and the armed forces remains a top priority. Those responsible for the disappearances of cockfighting enthusiasts will be held accountable regardless of their wealth or power. He pledged to prevent the resurgence of insurgent groups. Meanwhile, Marcos vowed that he will reject any items in the 2026 national budget that do not align with government priorities for the people. He also introduced the eGov app, a mobile app combining various government services. The president reaffirmed that country's independent foreign policy, friend to all, enemy to none. This will be the same when the Philippines hosts the ASEAN Summit in 2026. Marcos instructed the LTO to resolve the backlog of license plates and ensure timely release of vehicle registration. The government has confiscated over 83 billion worth of illegal drugs. On flood control and accountability, Marcos ordered the DPWH to submit a report on flood control projects from the past 3 years, which will be made public. He condemned corrupt officials involved in faulty food control projects, saying they should be ashamed, especially in the face of typhoon, victims and future generations who will inherit the nation's debt. The president also announced plans to build more dedicated evacuation centers across the country, saying public schools should no longer be used as temporary shelters during disasters. Those were just some of the key points from President Marcos' fourth State of the Nation address, which lasted just over an hour. For God and my beloved country, the Philippines, this has been Hannah Jane Sancho, SMNI News.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. says he will take a tough stance on government spending, vowing tighter control over the national budget in the final stretch of his term. The announcement comes as controversy swirls over alleged irregularities in the 2025 budget. MJ Mondihar for his 2025 SONA report.
Kailangan malaman ng taong bayan ang buong katotohanan. Kailangang may managot sa naging matinding pinsala at katiwalian.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. said he will impose stricter measures in approving the country's annual budget. This was part of his closing statement in his fourth State of the Nation address, or SONA. This comes in light of the issue involving the so-called buy scam, or the 2025 bicameral report, which allegedly contains lump sum funds and insertions into the budget. Several senators, including Senator Amy Marcos, warned that this violates proper procedure and may result in pork barrel-style allocations. President Marcos Jr. assured the public this won't happen again.
Therefore, for the 2026 national budget, I will return any proposed general appropriations bill that is not fully aligned with the national expenditure program.
The president said he is ready to stand firm against Congress if the national budget is not aligned with the Office of the President's proposal under the National Expenditure Program, or NEP. The NEP is the executive's official budget proposal submitted to Congress. But for the 2025 budget, there are significant differences compared to the BICAM report, which is the final consolidated version of the budget agreed upon by the Senate and the House following deliberations.
And further, I am willing to do this even if we end up with a reenacted budget.
In relation to this, former Executive Secretary Vic Rodriguez is urging the Supreme Court to immediately resolve the constitutional issue tied to the 2025 national budget. According to Rodriguez, the court's ruling is crucial to prevent a repeat of irregularities and ensure future budget deliberations strictly follow the Constitution.
At nakakalungkot, magsisimula na naman yung pagtalakay sa 2026 national budget, hindi pa natatapos itong issue ng 2025 unconstitutional national budget. Bukod pa riyan, hindi pa rin inilalabas yung hatol ng Korte Suprema doon sa 60 billion missing PhilHealth funds, yung kinuha ng national government, ng executive department mula sa PhilHealth. Dapat yan ay aksyonan na ng Korte Suprema so that everyone will be guided.
Former President Rodrigo Duterte himself had earlier raised concern over the issue of blank items, particularly allocations for the Department of Agriculture and program appropriations. These were not filed in before the bicameral conference committee signed off on the final version.
Hindi ko aaprubahan ang kahit anong budget na hindi alinsunod sa plano ng gobyerno para sa sambayanang Pilipino. Alam po natin sa ating puso kung ano ang tama, kung ano ang mali, kung ano ang mas mahalaga at mas makakabuti sa sarili, sa pamilya at sa ating bayan.
For Government of Philippines, MJ Mondihar, SMNI News.
20 peso per kilo rice. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. highlights wins in agriculture in a recent State of the Nation address, but critics say the real issues were ignored. Are farmers really seeing the benefits? Let's find out in Sheena Torno's report.
In his fourth State of the Nation address, or SONA, President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. touted what he called major strides in agriculture, highlighting the launch of his campaign promise, rice at 20 pesos per kilogram.
Kamakailan lamang ay matagumpay nating nailinsad ito sa Luzon, Visayas at Mindanao, kagaya sa San Juan, Pangasinan, Cavite, Occidental Mindoro, sa Cebu, sa Bacolod, sa Guimaras, Siquijor, Davao del Sur.
To support this effort, the government is allocating 113 billion pesos to expand programs under the Department of Agriculture, or DA.
Ilulunsad na natin ito sa buong bansa sa pamamagitan ng daan-daang kadiwa store at center sa iba't ibang lokal ng pamahalaan.
Marcos Jr. also issued a warning to traders allegedly manipulating prices and taking advantage of farmers. He said the government is ramping up efforts to address African swine fever by giving out free pigs and building new biosecurity facilities. The president also noted the completion of more farm-to-market roads, irrigation systems, facilities, and the distribution of machinery to farmers and fisher folks. But not everyone is convinced. Several agriculture groups were quick to respond, saying the president failed to address urgent issues in the sector.
Yung presyo ng kanilang produkto, hindi malamang binanggit ng buo kung anong mga hakbang para makuan ma-check na makakatanggap ng disenteng kita. Isa yan sa nakita kong malaking pagkukulang sa talumpati kaugnay po sa agrikultura. Paano natin ma-check na magkakaroon tayo ng kasabatan sa pagkain? In short, walang food security kung hindi pa natin inalagaan ang seguridad ng ating mga magsasaka.
Montemayor also pressed the government to take stronger action against agriculture smuggling, which continues to hurt local producers due to unchecked imports flooding the market. When asked to grade the president's performance, Montemayor said the SONA only earned a fair passing grade.
Again, barely passing Kasi parang hindi binibigyan ng sapat na diin yung matitinding problema sa agriculture. Kasi ang mensahe ay may mga problema pero ina-address ng gobyerno. Parang hindi tama yun na parang hindi sinasalo ng ating Pangulo na napakitindi ang problema po sa agriculture.
Meanwhile, the Samahang Industriya ng Agrikultura or SINAG welcomed the success of the 20 pesos per kilogram rice initiative, but also had a list of what they say were missed opportunities in the president's address. They're urging the government to reinstate 35% tariffs on imported agriculture goods and to increase the National Food Authority's budget to 50 billion pesos to buy more rice directly from farmers. They also want a floor price set for palay, or rice grains, to protect farmers from exploitation by private traders. For God and for my beloved Philippines, this has been Sheena Torno, SMNI News.
Vice President Sara Duterte is not holding back. In a bold and blistering speech delivered in South Korea, the Vice President questioned the President Marcos Jr.'s promises, his leadership, and the direction he's taking the country ahead of his fourth State of the Nation address. From jobs and poverty to rice prices and flood control, Duterte says the reality on the ground tells a very different story. This report from Jason Rubrico.
In a fiery speech at the Free Duterte Now rally in South Korea, Vice President Sara Duterte took aim at the Marcos administration, openly questioning the president's leadership and vision for the country. She said many of President Marcos Jr.'s promises don't match the reality most Filipinos face today.
Akala ko, ang gusto niya ay mas magandang Pilipinas kung ano yung nakikita at nararamdaman at tinitirhan natin ngayon. Gusto natin, iiwan natin ang maayos, maganda, maunlad, may disiplina, na mga mayaman, na mga Pilipino at na bayan. Hindi ko maintindihan kung bakit hindi ganyan ang paningin niya sa kanyang kailangan gawin para sa bayan.
The Vice President went on to express what she believes Filipinos truly want, a country where Filipinos do not need to go abroad just to find a decent job. For that to happen, Duterte said the Philippines needs better leadership. We deserve better, she declared.
Ayaw natin ng future na kailangan nating iwanan ng ating mga anak. Kasi dito sa bayan natin sa Pilipinas, walang trabaho, walang kita, walang oportunidad. Ayaw natin yun. Ayaw natin na mag-iwan ng lubog sa utang at hindi maayos na Pilipinas sa ating mga anak. Kailangan natin ng mas maayos na pamamahala sa ating bayan. We deserve better.
In the same speech, VP Sara reiterated her decision not to watch the president's SONA, citing her frustration with the administration's reports and promises. VP Sara also took a swipe at the president's recent State of the Nation address or SONA, citing her frustration every time she hears the president speak.
Sayang ang data. Kaya nga ma'am, ako din ayaw ko na rin manood. Kasi alam nyo, sa totoo lang sa totoo lang talaga, natitrigger ako sa pag nakikinig ako sa kanya. Yung, naiirita ka ba? Minsan, hindi, so, minsan lampas irita na siya, minsan galit na siya. Kaya gusto mo na basagin yung screen ng cellphone mo.
She further criticized ongoing government projects, questioning flood control efforts that don't seem to be solving the problem, and slamming the administration's long-standing promise of lowering rice prices to 20 pesos per kilo, calling it a flat-out lie.
Hindi ko alam kung saan galing yung naisip niya, na ipinangako niya para sa taong bayan na gagawin ng pamahalaan na 20 pesos ang kilo ng bigas. Kung alam niya na hindi magagawa yon, ibig sabihin noon siya ay nagsisinungaling, nambubudol.
The president ended her remarks by urging leaders to focus on results, not just reports, stressing that fancy speeches mean nothing if they don't reflect what ordinary Filipinos live through each day. For God and my beloved Philippines, I am Jason Rubrico, SM9 News.
Senator Francis Escudero secures a fresh mandate as Senate President, winning the confidence of the majority in a 19-5 vote during the opening of the 20th Congress' first regular session. This report from Ina Mortel.
Having been elected to the position of Senate President,
the question of who will lead the Senate in the 20th Congress has finally been settled. With a vote of 19-5, Senate President Francis Escudero was once again entrusted to head the upper chamber. Escudero gained the support of the majority of his fellow senators during the voting held on the first session day. Among those who voted in his favor were Senators Joel Villanueva, Win Gatchalian, Ronald Bato de la Rosa, Bam Aquino, Erwin Tulfo, Pia Cayetano, Alan Cayetano, Jingoy Estrada, JV Ejercito, Bongo, Lito Lapid, Rodante Marcoleta, Amy Marcos, Robin Padilla, Francis Pangilinan, Rafi Tulfo, Camille Villar, and Mark Villar.
the direction we will take will never be determined by a single hand, much less my hand, but by 24 heads, each with a mandate, each with a mind, each with a voice that matters. This is a collective body, and its strength lies in the balance, not in the banging of that gavel.
Aside from Escudero, Senator Jingoy Estrada was elected as Senate President pro tempore, while Senator Joel Villanueva was named the new chairperson of the Committee on Rules, thereby becoming the majority floor leader. Attorney Renato Bantug was retained as Senate Secretary, along with retired Police Major General Mao Aplasca as Sergeant at Arms. Senator Tito Soto was elected as the new minority leader. Following the vote, the Senate promptly adopted 4 ceremonial resolutions to inform the President and the House of Representatives of its organization and to formalize the conduct of a joint session for the President's 4th State of the Nation address. For God and my beloved Philippines, this has been Ina Mortel, SMNI News.
During the fourth State of the Nation address of President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., several senators were notably absent, but not without reason. Each cited urgent responsibilities or personal convictions. Full details from Jade Calabroso.
Senators Amy Marcos, Robin Hood Padilla, Ronald Bato de la Rosa, and Christopher Bongo were not present during this year's SONA of President Bongbong Marcos Jr. despite their absence. The senators emphasized their respective stands and urgent responsibilities for the nation. In a press conference after the opening of the first regular session of the 20th Congress, Senator Amy Marcos explained that she chose to focus on relief efforts for communities affected by recent typhoons.
Ako personally, talagang ayoko pumunta kasi may napakaraming dapat gawin na para sa akin urgent and important. Pupunta ako sa ilang school building at school houses kung saan yung mga bata nag-iintay ng pagkain, ng school supplies na nasira. Pupunta na lamang ako doon. Naka-schedule kasi yun eh.
According to the senator, her decision was also influenced by her alignment with the Duterte bloc, a group of senators allied with former President Rodrigo Duterte, who had earlier announced their intention not to attend the SONA. As for De La Rosa, he plainly stated that he chose not to attend to avoid what he described as pretentiousness. Meanwhile, Padilla also issued a statement. He said this was not about politics or personal resentment, but a form of principle and love for the country. He reiterated his full support for the president, especially in laws that promote the culture, traditions, and faith of Muslims, which he believes are key to equality and genuine peace for the people. However, Padilla said he could not attend the SONA as a silent protest, particularly while former President Rodrigo Duterte remains detained and faces the threat of trial in a foreign court. Go, on the other hand, missed the SONA due to a severe back spasm that required immediate medical attention. Despite this, he assured the public that he would still listen to the SONA as part of his duty as a senator. Meanwhile, the Duterte bloc expressed full support for Senator Francis Escudero as he resumed his post as Senate President at the opening of the 20th Congress. For God and my beloved Philippines, this has been Jade Calabroso, SMNA News.
The Senate's growing call for a total ban on online gambling took center stage after President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. failed to mention the issue in his recent State of the Nation address, a silence that left several lawmakers dismayed. Val Divina Gracia reports.
Several senators expressed disappointment over President Ferdinand Marcos Jr.'s failure to mention online gambling in his latest State of the Nation address, or SONA, calling it a missed opportunity to confront as a growing national crisis. Senator Alan Peter Cayetano did not mince words, saying he had hoped for a strong, clear stance from the president.
Kung may wishlist ako, sana nag-announce ng total ban on online gaming today.
Senator Joel Villanueva echoed Cayetano's sentiments, saying he was disappointed by the absence of any policy declaration against online gambling.
That's the only thing I'm disappointed in sa online gambling. I wish may announcement about it. And I'm also wishing for a total ban.
Villanueva further cited alarming statistics from private firm Capital Stone, which found that 66% of Filipinos aged 18 to 24 are already engaged in online gambling. He warned that the trend has become a national crisis, even calling it worse than Pogo or Philippine offshore gaming operators. Despite growing public concern and repeated calls from lawmakers, the administration remained silent on the issue during the president's annual address. The absence of any policy direction on online gambling raised concerns among senators actively pushing for a total ban to curb its social and economic impact, especially in the youth. Lawmakers from both majority and minority blocs have already filed or expressed support for various measures seeking to completely outlaw online gambling. Former Senate President Juan Miguel Migs Zubiri authored the Anti-Online Gambling Act of 2025, which aims to prohibit all forms of online gambling, like websites, mobile apps, and digital platforms, especially those targeting the youth. The bill mandates internet service providers and digital wallet operators to block access with heavy penalties for violators. Alan Peter Cayetano has consistently opposed online gambling and pogos. He authored Senate Bill No. 63, or Anti-Online Gambling Act, and filed the Anti-Online Gambling Advertisement Act of 2025, which seeks to ban all forms of gambling promotion in media, including including digital platforms. Senator Pia Cayetano, co-author of the same measures, emphasized the need to protect young Filipinos from gambling addiction. Her proposals include restrictions on e-wallet facilitation and stronger public education campaigns. Senator Ronald Bato de la Rosa supports an outright ban, arguing that Filipinos can easily find ways around existing regulations. He has publicly joined fellow senators in calling for strong executive action. While Senator Bongo has expressed intent to file legislation imposing a total ban on online gambling, aligning himself with the anti-gambling stance taken by the Cayetanos, Zubiri, and others. Reporting for Newsline World, this is Val Divina Gracia, SMNI News.
Protest marked the fourth State of the Nation address of President Marcos Jr. as groups across the country took to the streets to air long-standing demands. At the same time, a geopolitical analyst pointed to political disunity and foreign policy setbacks as key challenges for the administration. Almar Forzuelo reports.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. is now halfway through his term, and on the day of his fourth SONA, groups from across different sectors took to the streets to voice their demands. Key issues raised during the protest include wage hikes, protection of human rights, and other concerns affecting ordinary citizens. Geopolitical analyst Herman Camentong Chulaurel says the country's internal divisions are becoming a bigger concern amidst various controversies. He pointed specifically to political issues such as the impeachment efforts against Vice President Sara Duterte, which he believes impact the state of national solidarity.
Nagiging dahilan sa pagkawatak-watak ng bansa po natin na ikinatutuwa ng Amerikano dahil po yung ating inaasahan na independent foreign policy na isinasagawa sana ni Vice President Sara Duterte hindi po magawa-gawa.
Chulaurel also criticized the delays in the joint oil and gas exploration between the Philippines and China in the West Philippine Sea.
Ang masaklap kung dati sa panahon ni Presidente Duterte noong 2017 at 2018 nagkaroon na po ng Memorandum of Understanding na magkakaroon ng joint oil and gas exploration and exploitation na venture 60-40 a pabor ng Pilipinas. Ito po ay hindi lang naantala. So far wala na pong development dyan. At wala po tayong pakinabang sa ating sinasabing claim diyan. At imbis na meron tayong makuha na langis o gas galing sa South China Sea, kausap ang China, ay away lang ang napasukan natin.
When asked to rate the current administration's performance so far,
sa lahat ng aspeto, ekonomiya, society, sa ating foreign policy, lahat bagsak po si Bongbong Marcos.
even before the SONA, protest actions were already staged by various groups across Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. Both public discussions and actions continue across the country as the people closely watch the administration's next steps in the remaining half of his term. For God and my beloved Philippines, Almar Forzuelo, SMNI News.
Meanwhile, a deadly mass shooting has shaken Bangkok, Thailand. At least six people are dead, including 4 security guards, after a gunman opened fire inside one of the capital's most popular markets. The shooting happened at Ortorkor Market near the famous Chatuchak Weekend Market, a hotspot for both locals and tourists. The chaos unfolded quickly. CCTV footage captured people running for cover as gunshots echoed through the stalls. According to police, the gunman, unidentified, fatally shot 5 people, including a woman, before taking his own life. Videos circulating on social media show terrified vendors and shoppers fleeing for safety. Authorities are still piecing together the shooter's identity and possible motive. Thai authorities said they are looking into any possible links between the shooting and the ongoing border clashes between Thailand and Cambodia. The attack occurred as leaders from both countries are holding peace talks in Malaysia. Investigations are ongoing. After days of several clashes and rising tensions along the Thai-Cambodian border, a major breakthrough has been reached. But what exactly was agreed upon and who made it happen? Let us know more with Virgil Parba.
A breakthrough tonight in Southeast Asia. Thailand and Cambodia have agreed to an immediate and unconditional ceasefire after 5 days of deadly fighting along their shared border. The clashes have left at least 35 people dead and forced thousands to flee their homes. The ceasefire is set to take effect at 1 a.m. Philippine time. Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim made the announcement during a press conference in Putrajaya, Malaysia, after peace talks involving Cambodian Prime Minister Hun Manet and Thailand's acting Prime Minister Phumtham Wechayachai. The special meeting was co-organized by the United States with active participation from Chinese and American ambassadors to Malaysia. The Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, were on hand to help monitor the ceasefire. As the current ASEAN chair, Malaysia will oversee the implementation and compliance of the ceasefire. Anwar emphasized that the agreement marks a crucial first step toward de-escalation and the restoration of peace, and commended both sides for choosing diplomacy over conflict. Both sides will need to agree to pull their armies, which have now been greatly reinforced, back from the border and to accept some kind of independent monitoring to prevent further clashes. Cambodian Prime Minister Hun Manet called the meeting a very good meeting and expressed gratitude to Anwar, U.S. President Donald Trump, and the Chinese government for their support in reaching the agreement. He said a ceasefire serves a foundation for building mutual trust and moving toward normalization. Meanwhile, Thai acting Prime Minister Phumtham Wechayachai affirmed that the ceasefire was negotiated in good faith and reiterated Thailand's commitment to peace. To recall, the conflict began on July 24 over long-standing disputes along the 817-kilometer Thai-Cambodian border, particularly involving sovereignty claims over ancient Hindu temples such as Tam Wan Thom and Priya Vihira. This is Verhil Parbay, your citizen correspondent for God and my beloved country, the Philippines.
A moment of panic this weekend. 173 passengers and 6 crew members were forced to evacuate an American Airlines plane just before takeoff of Denver or at Denver International Airport. In a video posted by Mark Shurkis on Instagram, one of those aboard the said flight, passengers were seen rushing down the plane's evacuation slide as smoke and flames billowed from below the rear of the plane. Shurkis said they heard a loud boom around 5 to 10 seconds before the Miami-bound plane almost took off. The aircraft was speeding down the runway at 146 miles per hour. The incident happened at around 2:45 p.m. local Denver time on Saturday. American Airlines said all passengers and crew members were evacuated from the plane safely and apologized to customers for the terrifying experience. The company says landing gear issues caused the fire, but this was quickly extinguished by the Denver Fire Department. 1 passenger was hospitalized with minor injuries, while 5 others were evaluated on site but not taken to the hospital. Meanwhile, the United States Federal Aviation Authority has opened an investigation into the incident. Brazil is pushing back against pressure from former U.S. President Donald Trump, with a top official saying the country will strengthen ties with BRICS nations despite threats of U.S. tariffs. Jane Cudnita tells us more.
Brazil will not back down in the face of pressure from U.S. President Donald Trump by announcing plans to deepen cooperation with fellow BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, despite threats of steep U.S. tariffs. Speaking to the Financial Times, Celso Amorim, a top advisor to Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, said U.S. pressure is only strengthening Brazil's commitment to the BRICS group. Amorim criticized Trump's actions as heavy-handed interference in Brazil's internal affairs. He called it as something not seen even in colonial times, and made it clear that Brazil wants a diversified foreign policy and doesn't intend to rely on just one country. Earlier this month, Trump threatened to slap 50% tariff on Brazilian imports, linking the move to Brazil's handling of the legal case against former President Jair Bolsonaro. He also warned of a 10% tariff on countries aligning with BRICS, calling the group anti-American. In a sharp response, President Lula fired back, saying Trump is not the emperor of the world and that Brazil will not accept demands or pressure from any foreign power. The U.S. has accused BRICS of trying to undermine the U.S. dollar, but officials from BRICS nations insists that the group is not ideological or anti-American. Rather, it's focused on giving emerging economies more options in global trade. Today, around 65% of BRICS trade is done in local currencies, not U.S. dollars. This has been Jane Cognita, your citizen correspondent for God and my beloved country, the Philippines.
For our showbiz update, finally they are back and you can finally say the name of the hitmakers of Say My Name as Destiny's Child reunite during Beyonce's show in Las Vegas. And at the box office, Marvel's long-awaited Fantastic Four first steps soared to number 1 with a massive opening weekend. Here's Andrea Santos for our showbiz news.
The surprise reunion of Destiny's Child sent fans into a frenzy, marking a massive moment for music lovers and longtime followers of the iconic girl group. Global pop superstar and lead vocalist Beyoncé shared stunning snapshots of the performance on Instagram, alongside her fellow group members Kelly Rowland and Michelle Williams. Destiny's Child, one of the most influential female R&B groups of all time, originated in Houston, Texas, and rose to fame from the 1990s to the early 2000s. Their breakthrough came in 1999 with the album The Writings on the Wall, which featured chart-topping hits like Say My Name, Bills, 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 and Bugaboo. Michelle and Kelly previously joined Beyoncé for a surprise performance at her legendary Coachella set in 2018. Now, 7 years later, the trio has reunited once again, bringing fans to tears with a powerful celebration of sisterhood, legacy, and the timeless impact of Destiny's Child. Meanwhile, at the box office, Fantastic Four First Steps made a stellar debut, raking in $118 million in North America and reaching a global total of $280 million in its first week. The highly anticipated reboot of the Marvel Comics franchise stars Pedro Pascal as Reed Richards in Mr. Fantastic, Vanessa Kirby as Sue Storm in Invisible Woman, Joseph Quinn as Johnny Storm in Human Torch, Ebon Moss-Backrack as Ben Grimm in The Thing. The film premiered in Los Angeles on July 21, 2025, with a live-streamed red carpet event on Disney+, and officially hit global theaters on July 25. Thanks to its strong box office performance, Fantastic Four First Steps now holds the title of Marvel's first blockbuster hit of the year. This is Andrea Santos, your citizen correspondent, bringing you latest show buzz.
For our sports news today, history has been made in European women's football. England has claimed the Women's Euro 2025 title after a dramatic penalty shootout against Spain. Meanwhile, in tennis, Canada's Leila Fernandez reigned supreme in the U.S. Capitol, clinching the women's singles title at the Washington, D.C. Open after a dominant run in the tournament. Carlo de la Peña has more.
England's women's national team clinched their second UEFA Women's Euro title in a dramatic final against Spain in Berlin. The intense match ended in a 1-1 draw after extra time, pushing both teams into a nerve-wracking penalty shootout. England kept their composure and emerged victorious with 3-1 on penalties. Goalkeeper Hannah Hampton shined as a match hero, saving 2 crucial penalties, while Chloe Kelly delivered the winning kick for the Lionesses. The triumph follows England's historic first Euro win in 2022, marking back-to-back titles for the team. Meanwhile, Canadian tennis player Leila Fernandez, who has Filipino roots, dominated the women's singles division of the Washington, D.C. Open. In the finals, Fernandez overpowered Anna Kalinskaya with a commanding 6-1, 6-2 victory. Fernandez remained composed throughout the match, maintaining control until the very end. This win is considered the biggest in her career so far, as it marks her very first WTA 500 title. Before reaching the finals, Fernandez also defeated third seed Elena Rybakina of Kazakhstan in a hard-fought semifinal match. This is Carlo de la Peña, bringing the latest sports news.
And before we end, may you be inspired with the words of the sun. Winning and losing begin in the mind, and your mind is the womb of your faith. And that's all for this edition of Newsline World. For God and my beloved country, the Philippines, I'm Angel Pastor. Goodbye.